Hey everybody, I'm Den Haring. My channel is FishDen365 and welcome back to Topwater Tuesday. Tonight, we're going to continue to talk about finesse topwater fishing with the teeny Pop R. Okay, so the teeny Pop R is a Pop R that's made by Rebel, and it's very, very small. Just to give you an idea of how small it is, here's a teeny Pop R without the hooks alongside of a quarter. So you can see that it's a very small bait, and because of that, it's difficult to throw on standard bait casting gear. It barely weighs 1/8 of an ounce. So, typically I would throw this with spinning gear, something like maybe 10-pound test braid, and then I'd use a mono leader of 8 or 10-pound test mono leader of a rod or two lengths, and use it that way so that I can get some distance with the bait. Now there is this new method of fishing that's come out of Japan. It's called BFS. It stands for Bait Fish System. It's basically a very light bait casting rod and reel that allows you to throw these smaller baits with more accuracy than, say, with a spinning rod and reel. I haven't experimented with BFS systems yet. They're a little bit on the expensive side, but they're pretty cool. I like the idea of them, and if they work as good as what I've been reading, then it would be a way to throw this bait with more accuracy and probably be able to work it better as well. But that being said, eventually if I get to experiment with that, I'll make a video about it and share it with you here. But there's no reason why you can't use a spinning rod with the way I just talked about. A standard spinning rod with, I'd say a medium light or would probably be the right action, or even a light action spinning rod would work fine. You can throw that out with 10-pound test braid, have that leader on there, monofilament floats, and you can do a lot of damage with this bait. This is a bone-colored one here. Here's one that's a real natural looking one. It's clear with a little bit of blue and a red concave lip. And then this one, I don't have any hooks on it, but it's another nice one, a Tennessee shad color. I like this color. It's dark green back, light belly, orange mouth. Some really good colors here. The hooks on them are generally size 8. I've tied a feather tail on that one to match the bait. It's hard. It was hard for me to find. I don't know if Gamakatsu makes anything in their triple grips. What's called their EWGs. I don't think they make them in that size. I think the smallest size they make them is a size 6. But I understand that Mustad makes the triple grip hook in the size 8. And if that's the case, then you could always use the Mustad triple grip if you want that style of hook that is bent inward. I find that seems to hold the fish better when you're fighting the fish. They have to grab the lure well in order for you to get a good hook set because the hook is turned inward. But once you have that fish on, he's not coming off. Not like some of these other standard hooks. Got a tail on this one too. Anyway, this bait is it's a really interesting bait to throw. If you like fishing streams and rivers, this is standard fare. Or small ponds, another place to throw this kind of bait, wherever you have the forage being smaller, and that's typical on smaller streams, rivers, ponds. This bait really shines in that environment. But there's also a place for it on large reservoirs and lake scenarios too, like we talked about last week. When you have that situation where you have very clear water, you have the game fish are eating on real small fry. This usually happens right after the spawn in June and then again in September. And anytime you have that situation where the fish are a little shy, you might have brighter conditions. They may not want to come up for standard topwaters, but you might find that they'll come up for something small like this. They might not hit it real hard. They'll just come up and suck it in sometimes. And sometimes these smaller poppers can really be a killer in those circumstances when other baits just won't work or do the trick for you. I remember years ago, my brother and I and my dad and a couple of our friends used to fish at Shahola Lake. This was back in the 70s and early mid 80s. And there was a guy out there that used to fish. He had this green John boat, if I remember correctly, and he would fly fish with these poppers. And he would consistently catch big 6, 7, 8 pound largemouths consistently. I mean, more than other people were doing from what we could see. We knew this because sometimes he'd show us the stringers of fish that he was catching back then. And we'd see him out there quite a bit in the evenings throwing these poppers and just tearing the fish up. And they were extremely effective for catching these giant bass. And I think the reason why is he was real patient. He just let that bait sit out there and floop it and let it sit. He knew where to throw it. You know, he was fishing over big fish. And sometimes you need something like this just to get those fish to bite. And so, you know, those were flies that he was throwing, but this would be a good way to match what he was doing with a small, tiny popper like this. You know, these are small baits. They're not going to make a fish get nervous in any way or get suspicious. They just look like a food item, right? It's almost like, you know, maybe you had your dinner for the night and then someone comes around and they offer you a little, you know, some peanuts or some M&Ms and you're like, oh, I'll take a few of those. And so I think sometimes you know, an easy meal just sitting up there looking like it's hurt, if the fish is underneath it and it doesn't feel threatened at all because there's nothing threatening about such a small diminutive bait, they'll come up and they'll suck it in. And so that's when these finesse teeny pop R's can come in handy. And so if you're out there on a day where they don't seem to be eating the way they normally would, you know, try something like this. You know, go downsize and see what happens. I've had several days where I've done this and was very pleasantly surprised. Other days sometimes maybe not so much, but boy, when it works better than anything else, and it can really save the day and catch not only a lot of fish, but surprisingly big fish as well. That's the Teeny Pop R for this week's Topwater Tuesday. Give it a try. These things are still available. They're out there. I think Tackle Warehouse has them. Bass Pro Shops has them. Susquehanna Fishing Tackle has them. You can get these things in different color patterns and give them a try and see if you can't catch some fish on them. Well, if you like that video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Again, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you tune back in here for next Tuesday's Topwater Fishing. We'll have a video or two in between there on other fishing subjects. Looking forward to getting back out in the water. I thought I was going to get out this past weekend, but we had a bit of a problem at my house, and unfortunately I wasn't able to get out. So maybe this coming weekend I'll be able to get out and get some footage. We'll see. Be safe out there, and as always, may God bless your fishing endeavors.